Hello again, this is Dr. Renee of Pleasant Leadership Consulting, where we inspire your leadership freedom. Welcome back. This is session number 3 of our Maximize Meeting Productivity Tips to Avoid Derailment. So let's go ahead and begin. There's only one more session, one more week after this one. But before we begin, I want to make sure you have hit the subscribe button so you're notified every Friday when we upload a video for our Leadership University, because I don't want you to miss any of these exciting video clips. Also, you're notified when we do our Tuesday thoughts and our Thursday reflections. Excuse me. So I wanted to share with you before I get into section 3, avoiding the weight of minutia, why this series is so special to me. So many of you may know my husband. One of the kids call him Mr. Dr. Renee. I thought that was so cute when he was introduced as Mr. Dr. Renee. But anyway, he is a railroader. He's been a railroader for almost 20 years. It's his second career. And I've learned a lot about railroading. So when this idea came up to do this presentation, it was a natural for me. I already knew some of the terminology, and I get to showcase that this week in section number 3. But I did do a little fact checking with him just to make sure that as a wife, I picked up the right lingo and using it properly. So I'm very excited to be able to use some of my wife knowledge in this one and to make Mr. Dr. Renee very proud of that. So let me go ahead with section number 3, avoiding the weight of minutia. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and define. Minutia is the small, precise, or trivial details of something. So if you've ever been in a meeting or if you've led a meeting, you know how easy a meeting can go off track. It will be somebody who will take one part and they will fixate on this little detail of a point on the agenda or a sub-point that somebody has brought up, and it will go off. So I gave you a picture of some pebbles here. And that's what I want you to think of every time you think of the minutia. Some small detail, some trivial point that someone is making. I want you to think of these small pebbles. And I promise you, when you go to meetings from now on and somebody's harping on one of these small details, you're going to be thinking about these little pebbles now. They're like, that's a pebble, that's a pebble, that's a pebble. And that's exactly what they are. They're pebbles. And for some of us, they're like those painful stones when you walk across them, because when you see the person come to the meeting, you're like, oh, that's a pebble contributor. All they do is they get caught up in the minutia. Well, if you've got a chronic pebble person in your group, chances are there's an underlying issue there, okay? They are probably in the DISC personality. They're probably a C, and so they need those details. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they need to be heard. But there's a time and there's a place for that. So recognize their foresight for seeing those small details, but there is a time and a place for that to occur, and it's not necessarily in the brainstorming when you're looking at the broad idea of things. So it is a work in progress for them to know when to bring their giftedness out, or sometimes it is meant to purposely derail an idea. So we have to delve into it. So every pebble person is not meant to sabotage your meeting, is what I want you to take away from that. Sometimes it is a gift that they want you to look at all things and to consider that it could later on derail your plan. All right? So what I want you to do is, when you're looking at, wrong way, I want you to stay focused on the details of the project. So whenever we make a project, we look for the big, and then we go from big, and then we narrow it down. So it's like an inverted triangle. So we start with a big, and then we get down. So if you have truly that person, the detailed diva, that C personality in the DISC profile, we want them not. Yes, they're going to help us in the inverted triangle when it's broad, but we definitely want them as it starts to get narrowed down in the point. Okay, so if you've got that detailed diva and that is their gift and they're not trying to derail the group, have them log those concerns, and you're going to make them the point person as the project or the program or the process develops, and you're going to have them log those concerns, and they're going to be the point person to make sure that we have processes in place to stop or to correct these things, or they're going to be the checkpoint persons for those things. So Acknowledge their concerns. All right. All right. Use the parking lot system for unresolved issues to validate teammates. So again, if you got that pebble person, all right, and they're using this as a gift, all right, and to some degree, if they're using it to derail your thought train off the track, what you can do so you're not caught up in the moment and you're wasting minutes and you can get this meeting to move along, simply just get a piece of paper, and it could be a chart paper, stick it on the wall and put it on the paper. You validate that they brought up a point. You put it on the paper, and this is we'll go back to it, all right? So it's I heard you, I'm validating you, we're gonna get back to it. We're not gonna spend all our time focused on this because as leader, you're gonna be concise. This is not important at this moment. This will be a future agenda item. It's not relevant to today's agenda, and it doesn't fit the timeline today. So I'm going to put in the parking lot to be considered for agenda topic item in the future. So you validate the person who is, and it stops them from spiraling off topic, all right? And it may not be even an agenda item. It may mean that you have a one-on-one conversation with them privately. Or it may mean that you need to connect them on a one-on-one with somebody else to address an issue. Because the derailers, the pebble people who like to derail, they'll talk about something totally opposite. You're talking about apples and they're over here talking about grapefruit. So they just need an audience to hear them. So you just make a note on the parking lot. You take the parking lot with you, and then you coordinate meetings accordingly. And get that you've heard them, you've acknowledged them, you put it in the parking lot, and then afterwards you must do the follow-up in order that you keep your meeting facilitator credibility, and then at least say you have a follow-up. Now, whether or not they get the resolution that they desire, that's not necessarily up to you, but you've done your part and that you coordinated a meeting with the appropriate person, whatever the grapefruit issue was. All right. Do not chase unsolvable problems. So your pebble people who are intentionally trying to derail your thoughts, they're going to bring up problems that are unsolvable. Let me give you an example. We can't stop, we can't do this because this eyeglass lens cleaner cloth is going to fall. Well, yeah, it's called gravity. We can't solve gravity. We can't do this project because that's going to fall. Well, yeah, we're not going to solve gravity. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with gravity rather than work against gravity. So don't spend your time trying to solve the problem of gravity. Trying to get the lens cloth to stop falling. You're not going to solve the problem of gravity. Gravity is not your problem. So you're going to work against that problem and circle back another way. Let's find out how gravity can work with us. So instead, we'll create a device that holds this in place to our widget, so this doesn't fall. All right. So take your derailer, your pebble person who wants to come up with reasons why it won't, and turn it around and figure out. Okay, so their complaint is gravity. Okay, we'll turn it around. We're not going to fight gravity. We're going to fight the resistance of gravity. All right? That's just a simple solution. All right. This here is a picture of a close-up picture of track. So what I want you to do is, so you can see here, you can see the pebbles. This is actually in railroad world. This is ballast. What we call pebbles, they call it ballast. So ballast is necessary. It's the foundation. All right, and then what you see going horizontal, you see are the track, which is, in this case, this looks like it's cement, but it can be the railroad ties that you see that are soaked in the creosote. But then you see the railroad rail, which the train runs over the track. Now, you could technically run a train, not for very far and not very safely and not at a high speed, on a track with the ties that have been, welded there with those little loops, right? To hold it in place, to hold this track to the ties. You could technically run a track with ties, with the joints in place, across dirt without the pebbles. I wouldn't recommend it, and I wouldn't recommend it at a high speed, but you could do it. So the pebbles or the ballast aren't necessarily needed all the time. The ballast is there for support. The ballast is malleable, okay? So I'm telling you this to remind you that when you're in a meeting with your pebble people, they are needed. They help bring a different perspective to your meeting, but they are malleable. You can use them, and they are necessary for your foundation. I thought that was a pretty good illustration, all right? They help move your train, which is your thought, your project, down the track safely if you use them wisely. You need them for your foundation. So don't go into your meeting grumbling because you have a pebble person who's throwing up all the irritation. You do need a ballast person. You need a pebble person in your meeting. The thing is, you have to be able to form them, shape them, move them where you need to. Move them up against a railroad tie. Move them up against the railing of the track. You move them where you need them to be so that you can use them to the benefit of moving your train, your thought, your project, your program down the track. All right. Whoops. That concludes, well, I've really got to get a different mouse for this program. That concludes this week's program. We have one more in the series. Please check us out on our website or call us at 904-458-7317. I hope you found something in this week's series or the other 2 week series. If you missed them, check out our playlist. You can find them there, or if you just want to rewatch them. Tune in next week, our last last video in the series, and I can't wait for you to see it. It wraps everything up nicely. Leaders, go forth and lead well. Your followers need you.